So in today's practical session, as I mentioned earlier, we'll be looking at some structures that can be used for repetition in a program. And we'll be looking at the for loop structure. We'll be looking at the do while loop structure. And I will be seeing an example of how to convert a flowchart into Visual Basic code. Okay, so at the end of this session, I believe you should have a richer understanding of how some of these structures are used, and that you can always check on Moodle for the resources, like the videos and the lecture notes or video lectures about programming topics, in case you want to catch up on something that you missed during this session. The chat section is open. We have quite a lot to do today, so I wouldn't be waiting for you for a long time to give me answers to questions. But if you have questions, drop them in the chat section, and I'll check them and respond when I can do so. Okay, so to begin, obviously, as we usually do, we'll create a new project in our Visual Studio environment. Okay, so my new project here, we just title it as, let's see, so let's call this repetition. Okay, for the first example, let us call it simple interest. Simple interest. Okay. Let's save one folder on my computer. So the first two structures show us how they are written in terms of their syntax. So the first one is a for loop structure, written as follows: for loop structure, and it is written as for counter as data type equal to the start value to the end value, and then it's optional to put this parameter of step value, and if you want to specify the order in which the counter is able to proceed. So after that, you put the statements, and then you put the next, and the counter can follow. So in this case, the structure will be useful when you are trying to tell the program how many times, or should I say, for how many times do you want a statement to be repeated. So the counter here would be an example of a variable which you have declared as a particular data type. So this counter can be a letter X, it can be a letter Y, it can be, a variable name, it can be anything you decide, okay? And then as maybe integer equal to start value to end value. So it can be equal to 1 to 6 or equal to 0 to 5. So you're saying you want these statements to keep happening while that counter is 0, while it is 1, while it is 2, while it is 3, while it is 4, and while it is 5. So if it is 0 to 5, it means whatever is within those statements would carry on for the first time, up until the last time, or should I say from the start value up until the end value. That's the for loop structure syntax. For the do loop structure, it can be written as do while until instructions performed, then followed by the loop, or it can be written as do the following instructions and loop while a particular condition is met. Okay, so whichever repetition structure that you're comfortable with, you can use. The way you can be able to understand what to use is by going through each of the structures very well, reading more about them, then knowing when to use which structure in whatever scenario. Then that lets you know which one is the best at every point in time. So it is recommended that you know how each one of these structures work, because they could be used at different times in different ways, but Remember that your ideas can be different from that of your colleagues. In fact, it can be different from that of your lecturers. So whatever we'll be doing today is not the only way to achieve some of the solutions that we'll be talking about. Just remember that. Whatever we'll be doing today is not the only solution or the only way to achieve the programming solution that we'll be talking about. Okay, so having had that introduction, now let's start with the first exercise. Okay, so you have just deposited a sum of money into a bank account and you want to work out what the amount would be at the end of 6 months. The interest rate is entered by the user, and then you will need to output the bank balance at the end of each month. A sample of the input and the resulting output can be seen below. Simple interest rate is used. Okay, so you've been saving money into a bank, or you just saved money into a bank, and you have been told that this money you've saved will gain a simple interest of maybe 5% every month. Okay, so if you saved 1,000, for example, at the beginning of November or December, at the end of December, it would have increased by 5%. At the end of January, whatever value was remaining at the end of December would again increase by 5%. At the end of January, whatever value is there would increase again by 5%. Okay, so that is what we are supposed to program. Okay, so these interfaces show how these screenshots show how the interfaces will look like before you enter the input and after you have entered the input. So as usual, the first thing is to try to design the interface. So on this interface, we have the name of the form, or should I say the text property of the form as simple. So you go to the properties window of the form and change that to simple interest. We've done that a lot. By now, I believe you should be able to create an interface at least to be able to drag and drop control forms. Okay, simple interest, and then the next after that is a label called amount. It's another label called interest rate. We have a text box. We have a label here. We have another label here. We have a text box. We have another text box. Okay, let's pin this here. We have another text box here. And we have a button under that. And then below that button, we have another text box. Okay. Now, as you can observe that these the first two text boxes are, single line text boxes, whereas on the interface, the third text box looks to be bigger, looks like a, like a bigger text box. Okay, so in that case, in fact, it looks like what we call a text area sometimes. So how do we make this text box look like this? The third text box, we want it to be as big as this. So what you have to do is you change the multi-line property of that text box. So you click this text box, you go to properties of the text box, and then you look for multi-line, and then you change the multi-line value from false to true. And then once you change that, it gives you a chance to do what? To expand or to make it bigger or longer. So that means the text you enter or that is entered into this text box can occupy more than, or can go to the next line, multi-line. So this text box will have multiple lines within it. Okay. So we've created a interface. Now let us just label the text properties of some of these controls. Okay, so the first one is amount. So amount goes here. The second one is interest rate. The one is interest rate. Percent. Calculate balance for the next 6 months. Let me just increase that so that you can see what I'm doing. It's called calculate balance. For the next 6 months. So far what we've done is just do what? Create an interface. Okay. Now we've created an interface. We can now go ahead. Okay. Also, we've changed the multi-line property of the text box to true from false. Okay. Then we can go ahead to the next page, which is page 2 of the transport document. This is what we have here. All right. So the first value entered into the amount text box will be the first value for that month. That means in this text box you have here, amount, the first value you enter here should be the first value for that month. So remember I said, if you want to start saving money for 6 months, starting in December. So the first value you enter here would be the value for the first month. Okay. And then that means we will have to find the value for the next 5 months. That is after December, which is the first month, the next 5 months, January, February, March, like that. So to output the value onto the text box, go to the programming area of the button created and type in the following. So now we want to program the button. Okay, so to program the button, you double click on the button and it takes you to the programming area of that button. Okay, within this programming area, type in the following codes. Okay, so that's going to be text box 3 dot text equals format text box 1 dot text currency. Then that will be added, or should I say joined. So this plus is to join. It's not like it's not mathematically adding things together. It's joining what we have here. Okay, it's joining this function here to another control characters, and this control characters dot new line is used to represent a new line character. So usually, remember in this case we have a multi-line or multiple line in our text box. It means that when we start entering data into this text box, when we enter the first data or whatever input it is, it will stay on the first line in this text box. And then we want to say that the next inputs should go to the next line. Because if you don't specify that, it's just going to enter the next input on the same line, the next input on the same line, and it will keep going on like that, and it won't be neat. Okay, sort of like you are using a break tag in HTML. Remember, if you use the break tag in HTML, it goes to the next line for you in the browser. Okay, it gives you a line break in the browser. So something similar is happening here in the case that here we are specifying that text box 3. Remember, we have 3 text boxes. We didn't rename the text boxes. So that means our text box, the first one is still text box 1, the second one is text box 2, and the third one is text box 3. So now we are referring to text box 3, and we are saying that text box 3 dot text, that is the text property or whatever is going to be in text box 3, should be formatted as follows. Okay, So so the text box one dot text, which is whatever is typed into this amount, this second argument specifies that it must be formatted as currency. Okay, so by default, it will take the currency value of Visual Studio, or I mean, of the application that you have on your computer. Okay, so most times you would realize that the currency is set to dollars. You can always change that to rands. There is a way of doing that, but we won't be getting into that today. Okay, but by default, it changes the currency, or it formats the value of the text box one as currency, and the default currency value or symbol is used. In this case, I think it's going to be dollars. Okay, now once that is done, that is the main thing that needs to be done. Okay, but then this one is joining that to, we've talked about concatenation a lot, so I believe by now you should be able to understand joining, either using this plus symbol or using the ampersand symbol, which is something like this. Okay, so by now I want to believe that you should understand what that thing is and when it is used. Okay, so it joins whatever I've explained now to the control characters dot new line. So this creates or sends whatever is coming after it to the next line. Okay, so that's the function. That's what this line represents in this program. Okay, so then we move to question 3. Sorry, should I say step 3, which just explains what I have just said now. So the format function will allow you to display your answer as a currency value. Settings on the computer determine the currency to be displayed. The instruction control characters.newline will allow you to display the other amounts on a new line in the same text box. Okay, so that's just to summarize what I explained just now. Now, complete the following code by filling in the blanks. Complete the following code by filling in the blanks. Okay, so for the benefit of those of you that you prefer to, practice the codes after the practical sessions, I'm just going to show you the solution so that whenever you, so that if you're not following, if you're not typing as I'm typing now, at least you can have an idea of what the whole code can look like. Remember, again, there may be other ways for you to achieve this same solution, but we are looking at one of the ways of doing that in this practical session. Okay, so you're expected to complete this following code. So there are some blanks here. So I believe if you were told to fill in these blanks, maybe in an assessment, like a test, you should be able to have an idea what to do. Okay, so in this case, a variable j has been declared as our counter here, but it has been used as our counter here, but it has not been declared. So it makes sense to assume that the missing item here is the letter J, because this J has been used, but it has not been declared. Remember, before you use your variables, you have to declare them so that the program can understand what type of data they will be holding. So here, the missing item here will be J. So our program will go as follows. Name J as integer. So we're declaring letter J as integer. SUM. Okay. And we assign that immediately to box 1. That is, whatever the user enters into text box 1 should be saved in our sum variable. Okay, and then after that, we go to the next line, which is where we now use the for loop structure. Okay, so we say, remember, I gave you the syntax of a for loop structure up here. For counter as data type equal to start value to end value. So here, our counter is going to be J. for j as integer, we've already declared integer here, is equal to the start value, which is 2, to the end value, which is 6. So in this case, given that we want to find the interest for the next 6 months, so when you put your money today and it's 1,000 rands, the interest only comes after 30 days, isn't it? So the first month is this month, the second month is next month, and that is when you start getting your interest. So if this was to be the 1st of December, and then 1 month after now, which is 30 days, will be the second month in this case, that is the only time the interest starts coming in. So when you put your money today, you can't just get your interest immediately. You have to wait for the second month to begin, and then third month, and the fourth month, fifth month, sixth month. So that is why this counter is starting from 2. Remember, this is going to handle the first value that you enter into text box 1. It's going to be saved first. Then after that, the second value, not the second value, the second calculation for that month would take in the first value plus the interest. So that is why in this case we are starting from 2. So for j is equal to 2 to 6, remember that is the syntax of writing it. This is the syntax for counter as data type equal to start value to end value. You can choose to say for j as integer, but we have already declared j as integer up there, so that wouldn't be necessary to write here. Okay, for j is equal to 2 to 6, then what should be the statements that follow, and then followed by the next. So in this case, for j equal to 2 to 6, the statement that follows is sum equal to sum or concatenated with sum times text box text. So here, text box to the text. Let me just put it this way: to calculate simple interest, who can tell me the formula? Can someone tell me the formula to calculate simple interest? If you want to calculate a simple interest, how do you do that? Anyone? Chat section is open. Formula to calculate simple interest. Okay, no response. So in this case, let's go back to our interface. The simple interest is going to be that's amount in percent, that's rate in percentage multiplied by the amount, and then you get a value, and that value you get is the interest that you now add to the amount, the previous amount, to get your balance. So in this case, if your amount is 1,000 rands and your interest is 10%, okay, so that means, and your rate rather, your interest rate is 10%. So that means to get your interest, it will be 1,000 times 10%. 1,000 times 10%. And that gives you a value of 100. So 100 will be your interest, and then you add that interest, which is 100, to your previous amount. So if you had 1,000 before and it has increased by 10%, that means your new amount or new balance will be 1,100, which is 1,000 plus the interest. So for 1,100, if you gain another 10% interest, then you find 10% of 1,100. Whatever value you get, you add it to the previous amount, which is 1,100, and you get your new interest. So that's how we calculate the simple interest here. So this is the formula for that. the sum times text box 2 divided by, remember text box 2 here is the interest rate. So the interest rate here, you enter, and you enter either a value of 5, 10, 11, whatever the interest is. So whatever you enter here in text box 2 divided by 100, that's the percent, isn't it? So 5 over 100 is equal to 5%. Then sum multiplied by that value. In this case, our sum is whatever we have typed into text box 1, which is our amount. So you multiply the sum or the amount by text box 2.text divided by 100. That gives you the interest. Then you add that to the initial sum, just like I explained, and that gives you the actual balance at the end of that month. So for j equal to 2 to 6, we will repeat this statement, or these instructions will be carried out. This will be repeated for j equal to 2, for j equal to 3, for j equal to 4, for j equal to 5, and for j equal to 6. It will stop after j is equal to 6. That is how to use the for loop structure. Okay, so let's see how this works after running the code. Okay, but before then, let's add one more line here. So this line is going to be added now. Okay, so it's going to be text box 3 dot text equal to text box 3 dot text concatenated with this format. Okay, so up here I've already explained to you what this format does. It just formats it. It formats the sum, in this case, the value of text box 1, the text, as currency. Okay, it formats it as a currency value. I've explained that earlier. Okay, so here in this case, whatever the content of text box 3.text is here, remember now it's going to be our text box 3.text here would be whatever is in this multi-line text box. Okay, text box 3.text will be whatever is in this multi-line text box, and then it will be concatenated with the value of the sum that we obtain here. The value of the sum we obtain here, which is whatever the value is, okay, formatted as currency. Okay, and then we want the next one to be on a new line, so you concatenate that again with this control characters dot new line. As I explained earlier, this makes sure that your the next item in that text box goes to a new line. Okay, so we are done with this. Let us run it and see how it works. So I'll click on the start button up here. As I said, if you missed something or you're not sure, or you can always rewind slowly whenever this video has been uploaded, so that you can just go back to what you missed or what you're not sure of, and watch or rewatch as many times as possible until you are able to understand it. Also, feel free to watch or to make use of other resources like YouTube to supplement your knowledge about this topic. Okay, so the program is running here. Let's test. We have been told to run the program and test it with the following values. Let's enter the amount as 1,000 and the interest rate as 5. So amount 1,000, that's the amount of the first month, and then the interest rate 5. So we want to calculate balance for the next 6 months. Remember, the value for the first month will still remain as 1,000, but at the beginning of the second month, we want the interest to have been applied. At the beginning of the third month, up until the 6 months, we want the interest to be applied. So now we want to display all the balance for next 6 months here in this text box. So by clicking on this button, which we have programmed, it should help us achieve that. As you can see, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We have 6 lines which represent the 6 months, which represents the balances of this customer or this user. Remember, Okay, let me just close that and just show you. So if I was to remove this, let me say I remove this control car as the new line. Let's see how it affects the program. If I run this again and enter 1,000 and enter 5, that's 5%. Calculate balance. You see what happens? Only the first one managed to stay on the new line. Why? Because we have it up here. Okay, remember this was handling the first amount entered. That is why after the first amount entered, it went to a new line. But after that new line, every other value followed each other. Why? Because we didn't specify that they must also go to new line. So let me return this. Okay, let me stop running first and then return what I removed from here. And if I run this again, it should be fine as it was before. The new line. Now it's back to how it was. So now we have a program which shows the balance for the next 6 months. If the amount of then the balance for the next 6 months for this customer would be the following. Okay, so the first one is 20,000 rands. Oh, sorry, in this case, dollars anyway. And then by the second month, the interest from the first month has been added, and then the new balance is $22,200. And then the third month, the interest has been added, and it has increased to this up until the 6th month. All right, so that's how that program is running. Any questions? Please feel free to use the microphone or drop your question in the chat section. Okay. As I wait, let me just continue in case anyone is still typing a question. Change the program. So now I'm on page 2 of the practical document, still in exercise 1, step 5. So we're in step 5. Change the program to allow the user to enter the number of months through a text box. Remember, in this program, the number of months was hard-coded into this for statement. It was hard-coded into the counter. We said for j equal to 2 to 6. So we have made sure that this cannot change. But now, if the user is the one that specifies the number of months, we want our program to do it in such a way that the number of months that the user wants to calculate must be entered into a text box. So they say the number 5 says change the program to allow the user to enter the number of months through a text box. So there'll be a text box. In that text box, there'll be a label to say, please enter the number of months that you want to calculate. Okay, that's the first thing. Then, once the user has entered the number of months, the correct number of months must then be displayed on the button. Remember, currently our button just shows calculate balance for the next 6 months. So what if the user enters a value of 10 into the text box to calculate the number of 10 for 10 months? We want our button also to change. We want the text property on our button to change from 6 months to 10 months. We want the text property to change into whatever the user has specified. So if the user specifies 4 months, we want the text property on the button to change to calculate balance for the next 4 months. If the user has entered 2 months, we want this text property to change to calculate balance for the next 2 months. Okay, so those are the things we want to add to our codes now. And because the user might decide to enter, say, 24 months, so we have to make sure that our multi-line text box here can be scrolled, because as it is now, if the user enters 24 months, this multi-line text box will not be able to handle 24 lines. Okay, so we want to enable a property that enables this text box, this text box to be able to be scrolled up and down to see what is, below, to see what is inside, or should I say, that cannot be displayed at the same time in the text box. So there are about 3 things we need to do. So we can start with the last one, which is to make sure that our multi-line text box can be scrolled. So you click on the multi-line text box, you go to the properties window, and then you look for scroll. In this case, I select vertical. Okay, as you can see here on the interface, you can see there seems to be 2 arrows, one pointing up and the other one pointing down. Those will be the scroll bars. Okay, so when we run the program, if there is a need for the lines to exceed this multi-line text box, then the scroll bars will be activated. Okay, so we've done that. Again, you click on this, you go to the properties, you select scroll bars, and you select vertical, because it will be going down. Horizontal, it will be going left to right, but vertical, it will be going up and down. So we want it to be vertical, because our output will be on new lines going down. Okay, so then after then, we need to add a new text box. Let's just rearrange this. We need to add a new text box somewhere here that tells the user to enter. Okay, let's say there's a text box here and there's a label beside it which tells the user to enter the number of months they want to calculate. So let's just call this enter the number of months you want. Okay, so there's a text box, there's a label that says enter the number of months you want. And then after that, we have this button, and then we have this text box. Okay, so we have 4 text boxes now. Don't forget our latest text box, the name is going to be text box 4 by default. So don't forget that. Although it is arranged this way, it doesn't mean it is text box 3. It was the 4th text box to be created or added to this form. So its automatic name will be text box 4. Our text box 3 is still this multi-line text box. Okay, it's important to remember the name so that when you are coding, you are not coding the wrong controls. Okay, so now we have text box 4.text. So now within this text box 4, we want to write a code that will change the property, the text property of our button into whatever the user has entered. Okay, we want to change the text property of our button to whatever the user has entered. So you have something that looks like this. Okay, so button1.text, we want to change the text property of the button. Remember, we are only changing what shows on the button, the text that shows on the button. That's what we want to change. And we want that change to be dependent on whatever the user enters into text box 4.text, which is the new text box we just created. So ideally, we can just put a string that says calculate, because obviously what we want is the text property. So it can start with a string, calculate balance for the next, like a space here. This. So whatever we want to determine now depends on text box 4. So we join that, right? We join that with the text box 4 value whenever the user enters. Text box 4.text, and then we join that again with the rest of our string. So just put a space here. All these things, don't worry, you might not get everything at once. You might type something, you run it, you realize, oh, you need to adjust something, then you do that. That's fine. It doesn't mean you always have a clear and correct picture of what you want to achieve immediately. Sometimes it might take you maybe after many attempts to get whatever you're looking for. That's absolutely okay. Okay, so do not always, as I said earlier, of course, this practical session is just to show us how these things can be done. Doesn't mean there are not other ways of doing it. It also doesn't mean that it doesn't take time to do this. Okay, so once you have this, what this does is that on the button, it starts with the string, calculate balance for the next. Now, is it next 1 month or next 2 months or next 3 months or next 15 months? That depends on what? Text box 4.text. So that is why this is not typed as a string. Okay, so it depends on what the user has entered as a text property of text box 4, and it has been joined by this ampersand, and then after that it continues to be joined to the rest of the string. So we are joining this string together with the value of text box 4 together with the rest of the string. Okay, so let's just test that before we continue. So if you run that, we'll have, so for now, I just want to test whatever goes in here. So observe that currently this says calculate balance for the next 6 months. But if I enter the number of months I want and I put 12, let us watch what happens. As you can see, as I typed it in, it changed the text property of the button from 6 months to 12. It only changed the part where I entered. Okay, if I change this to 16, it changes. If I change this to 24, it changes. Simply because that text property that I'm changing is the one for text box 4.text, and that is why it is changing on the button. Okay, so that's working fine. Let's see what the question says. Okay, the allows the user to enter the number of months through a text box. We've done that. The correct number of months must be displayed on the button. Okay, now we want to now add new codes to our previous program. We want to add new codes to our previous program because now there are new conditions. Okay, so we want to make use of a variable called months. So we can just declare months up here as integer, and after declaring months as integer, here, remember that at the end of the day, we want to make sure that whatever we enter, whatever this 4 is going to be, the counter will depend on whatever the user enters into text box 4. So we now say, if text box 4.text is blank, the default value of the months should be 6. So in case the user forgets or decides not to enter anything into the text box 4 that we just created, then we should use the 6 as a default value. That means the number of months. Else, and we've talked about the if in the previous practical, okay? So you should be able to understand again how this works. Else, that means if the condition above is not true, remember the condition above is if the text box 4.text is blank, all right? So now, if that condition is false, that means if there's some content in it, then assign that content, which is text box 4.text, assign it to the variable called month. Okay, and then end if, and then after that, new counter will be for j is equal to 2 months. Remember now, months is a variable. So our counter will be starting from 2, and it will be stopping at whatever the user has entered into text box 4.text. If the user did not enter anything, in this case, if it is blank, then this month's will be equal to 6. Okay, so that's what we have just done. Let's run this program. Amount 1,000 now, and the interest rate, let's say 15%. Enter the number of months you want. Let's say we want months. And if I click on this button, you can see now that we have different balances for 12 months. Let me change this number of months to something longer so that you can see how the scroll works. So I change this to 18 months and I click on this button. Okay, now you can see that the scroll bar has been activated because the values have exceeded the normal length of the multi-line text box. Now you see the balances for 18 months. And of course, if you do not enter anything into this text box, it takes what? The default value of 6 months as it was specified. So we have only 6 months here in the interface. And that is the end of that simple interest program. Any question? Okay, because of our time, I won't wait too much for you to ask the questions, because I believe by now you can drop the questions in the chat section, or you can use the microphone if you want to. So let's move on to exercise 2, just very quickly. Exercise 2 is about, okay, let's create a new project and call it, let's call this new project password. Okay, I'm just saving the old project. Now I want to create a new project, Visual Basic Windows Forms application. Let's call this password. For this exercise 2, there is someone called Angelina Pitt. Angelina Pitt has very important documents on her computer. She has asked you as a programmer to develop a password system. The system must give the user 3 chances to enter the correct password. If the password is entered correctly, the system must output access granted. Otherwise, the system must output access denied. Otherwise means if the password entered is not correct. Okay, so if an incorrect password is entered 3 times, then the system must output access denied to say it is incorrect. But also because it has been entered 3 times, which is the maximum number of chances, then the system must be locked down, or the user must be prevented from further access to the system. So I believe it's a very similar, it's a very, should I say, common scenario when you're trying to log into a website sometimes and they say you only have 3 chances, or you try to unlock your phone and they say you have 10 chances. And then if you keep entering the wrong password or the wrong PIN, it will be telling you incorrect, 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 until the maximum number of chances have been reached. Then it locks your phone, or it locks access to that device or that website. So that's what we're trying to do here. Okay, so the password of Angelina Pitt is password. That's the information that we've been told here, believe it or not. The password is password. So the correct password for this system is PASSWORD, as you can see here in capital letters. Okay, so that is, they're telling you as a programmer that that is the password that you want to test your users against. So who can tell me, for this kind of system, what controls do we need? Anyone? Chat section open. What controls do we need for this system, for this interface? What controls or objects do we need to add to this form in order to make this program to be accessible by the user? Okay, Samgelizwe says text box for password. Thank you. Text box for password would have been very, in fact, it's very correct. Let me put it that way. Text box can be used to get input from the user. That's correct. But in this case, they have gone further to say that we must make use of an input box. So Samge, you are right. A text box can be used to collect input from the user. But in this case, this person wants us to use an input box. Okay, thanks for your contribution. Okay, so we want to use an input box. So what other control can we have on this form? Thank you, Leisha. Leisha says button and input box. Thank you. So we want a button that the user can click on. Once the user clicks on the button, it must open up a dialog box, in this case, an input box, which they can now enter the password. So let's create this interface. We need a button. We just need a button. Okay. So let's make the button a big button because it's the only one in our form. And then we'll just change the text property of this button to enter. Let's say click here to enter password. Click here to enter password. Okay, let's say that's our button, and the text on it is click here to enter password. Okay, let me just see if you can make this look a bit much better than this. Okay, I've just made it bold. Okay, yeah, let me leave it at that for now because of our time. So click here to enter password is the button that will be shown to the user. And once the user clicks on this button, there should be shown a dialog box, which is an input box, which asks them to enter the password. Okay, so that is what this instruction says. Okay, then the user has 3 chances to get the correct password. The user must be told how many chances he or she has left after every wrong guess. And the output access denied. So this output that says access denied, X chances left, where X is going to be the number of chances left, and access granted must be in a message box. So in our programming area, we'll have to make use of an input box and a message box and code that to accept and to display data. Okay, so if the user cannot get the password after 3 tries, then the message account locked must be displayed. If the user gets the password right, the message welcome must be displayed. So let's do this quickly. Okay, so let me just go straight here because of our time. Double click on this button to go to the programming area of the button as usual. Then we need 3 variables. We need one called correct. We need another one called chances, and then we declare another one called guess. Okay, so the correct password, which is a string, is equal to password. Okay, remember, you must first you must indicate what the correct password is, and we have been told the correct password is password. So we've stored that into a variable called correct. So we want the user to be able to match that value in the variable called correct. Then another variable called chances tells the user how many chances they have. So there can be an integer value of 3. They have 3 chances. And guess is whatever the user has entered into the input box. Okay. So here we'll use another, because this is going to be repeating itself 3 times. So we'll use another type of repetition or structure or repetition structure called the do while structure. So we say do, remember the syntax for that can always be found here. Do while, or sometimes it can be do until a condition has been met. So do while a condition is true, or do until a condition is true. Whichever one, as I said, it depends on the scenario. So here we are using do while, and then we'll loop that, or sometimes it can be do this instruction as long as it is true, and keep looping until, or keep looping while that condition is true. Okay, so as I said, read more on that, practice more on that, so you can know which one to use at what time. So here we're using the do while. Now the condition is do while chances greater than 0. Do while chances greater than 0. So what should it do while chances are greater than 0? It should do all this. Okay, while the chances are greater than 0, it should do all this. That's what it's saying here. It's saying there. Okay, do while chances greater than 0. Remember, chances here is our variable. So as long as the value of chances is not a negative value, that is a value greater than 0. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and things like that. So as long as the value entered by the user, as long as the value of the chances that the user has is not a negative value, keep doing that. Keep doing what? I'm going to type now, guess equal to input box. Remember now, we want the user to enter, something. Box, not text box. Okay. Although sometimes, of course, you can always use a text box, but we have been actively using input box. So whatever the user enters will be saved into the get variable, and then this system will check whether whatever the user entered is equal to the correct value. So that's what we do here. So get equal to input box, that will get the value of the get. And then if you like as well, you can put it here and say dim guess as string equal to input box enter password. You can put this here if you want, whatever works for you. Okay. So if guess equal to correct, that's the name of our variable. If guess equal to correct, then message box dot show access denied. Sorry, access granted. I meant to say access granted. The value of the guess is equal to the value of the correct variable. Then show to the user access granted. That means they've gotten the password. And once the user has been granted access, that means there is no point of asking the user to enter a new password again, isn't it? So we want to make sure that the program or this structure ends there. So who can tell me, when can this structure end? Can someone tell me? We have said do while, keep doing whatever is here, while chances greater than 0. So when would it stop repeating? Can someone tell me?
It's 3.
Okay, but 3 is still greater than 0. So it will still keep doing that because the chances, you said at 3, né? But 3 is still greater than 0. So that will still keep happening. Whatever is here before the loop will still keep happening. Do you agree with me? So we are saying we want this loop to stop. So at what point would it stop? That's what I'm asking. when the user gets the answer correctly, sorry, in this case, the password, we want the program to just end there. So we force the value of chances to be negative because we know when the value of the chances is negative, then this stops happening. Remember, this only happens, it says do while chances greater than 0. That means when chances, or when the value of the chances is less than 0, that will not be, let me say, doing anymore. If you get what I mean, it won't be doing anymore because it's only do while chances greater than 0. So we are saying if the guess is equal to correct, that's if the user gets the correct password, if the value in the input box is equal to the value of the correct variable, then we want the chances to be equal to a negative value, like -1, for example. Just any negative value. So once it's a negative value, then it ends. It doesn't ask the user to enter another password again because it is already correct. But, or should I say else, if that is not true, if whatever we have here is not true, else, that's where the else comes in. That's if the user entered maybe an incorrect password, then chances that the user has is going to be what? Reduced by 1. You get that? So it reduces the chances by 1. So the initial chances that the user has is 3. That's the initial value. But remember, it's a variable. But if the user has guessed incorrectly, the chances will be reduced by 1 and it will become 2. And then it will keep on repeating itself. If the user enters a value that is incorrect again, the chances will reduce by 1 and becomes 1. If the user enters the wrong one, the chances become 0 and then the program ends. Okay. So here, chances equal to chances minus 1. Message box go to the user. Remember, we've been telling the user how many chances they have left. The message box shown to the user will be access denied. And this string to the number of chances left. That's to a string. Okay. So we want to tell the user access denied. You have whatever number of chances left, but we don't know the chances yet. So that's why we leave it. You don't need to put a string around it. Just join that string. Remember, when you're creating a string, remember that it must start with a quotation mark and it must end with a quotation mark. Then if you want to join it to something else, you use the ampersand symbol. You join it, in this case, to a variable. After you're done, you join that again to the string. Remember to always include those things. Okay. So in this case now, after the loop ends, to determine if the user has guessed correctly or not, then you have another if statement outside the loop that says if chances is equal to 0, then there must be a message box to show to the user that your account has been locked. So just call this account locked. Else, as long as the chances so It gives you an input box. It gives you an input box. And after that input box, or should I say within that input box, you have where you should enter your password. So if I enter my password as Victor, and I click on OK, it tells me that access denied, 2 tries left. Remember, the 2 is coming from the calculation of the number of chances remaining. So the 2 is displaying the value in the variable called chances. Okay, you click on OK. I have 2 tries left. Once you click OK, it tells you have, okay, I think something is wrong with our code here, because it's supposed to give me a chance to enter my password again. Okay, so that will have to do with the arrangement of my initial variables. So here, I declared guess as string, and I initialized the value of the guess as the input box value. So this is outside the loop. It is not inside this loop. And that is why it is not repeating. Okay, so that's a very good way to explain. Okay, remember, once again, it is okay to encounter challenges and errors when you're running your codes. That is how you'll be able to even understand more, and you'll be able to troubleshoot and debug some errors in your code. So by doing this, by initializing this value up here, it is outside the do while loop structure. It's outside, it is not inside the structure, and that's why it didn't give me another chance to enter, another password in the input box. Okay, so I'm going to remove this from here and put it here and say guess, because we want it to repeat after every unsuccessful chance. Guess equal to input box, enter password. Let's run this again. Okay, it's running here. Let's click here to enter password. So the password again, let's say Excel. You click OK. It says access denied, 2 tries left. So I have 2 tries to get the correct password. If I click OK, now you see it gives me a chance to enter another password. Now it is repeating, because now it has been placed into the do while loop structure. So if I enter another password again, say, let me look for someone's name here. Lisha, let's say Lisha. It tells me access denied because my password is wrong. Now it tells me 1 tries left, or 1 try left. Okay, and then if I enter another wrong password, let's say Sandile, Sandile, access denied. Now I have 0 tries left, so I cannot even be given another chance anymore. So when you click on OK, it should say account locked, because we have reached the end of the chances that we have, and the account has been locked. And that is the end of that program. Okay. But if I click here to enter password and I enter the correct password as, so ideally when you say, account locked, you should probably just kick the user out or close the program. So that would be a very good way to, program that. Okay. So if I enter the correct password here and I click OK, so password has been entered as password. It tells me access granted because it is correct. If I click OK, it should tell me welcome. Okay, so that's just what is happening in this program. As I said, if it looks too overwhelming, take a break, watch this video again, rewind, pause, watch other videos read more about the concepts of the structures, and you would get the hang of it. All right. Remember, there is not just one way to do this. There are other ways you can achieve this solution. Okay. Any question? Any questions? All right. No question. Let's go to exercise 3, which is flow chart. Exercise 3 is flow chart. If we are unable to finish this, exercises before our time is up today, just take notes. That's why I've been trying to display the solutions to you so that you can always try them on your own. So this is the solution for exercise 3, and this is the solution for exercise 4. Okay. Yeah. So you can just take note of this, just in case we are unable to finish before the time. Hopefully we'll finish in the next 15 minutes, if possible. Okay, so the next exercise 3, which is flow chart. So let me create a new project here and call it flow charts. New project. Let's call this flow chart. Okay. So I've created a new project called flowchart. Actually, in this project, we do not need to create an interface. Okay, no. Let's check. So the first one would be to convert. Yeah, we can have an interface. Yeah, we can have an interface here. Even though the program just tells us to the exercise tells us to convert this flowchart to correct VB code. Yeah, but you can go ahead, obviously, to use an interface to test the flowchart. So in this exercise, you are expected to convert the following flowchart that you see here to the correct Visual Basic Code. The program accepts input from the user through the interface that you create. As I said earlier, it then finds the sum of the odd numbers and the sum of the even numbers. The loop stops when the value of the variable count is equal to the value of the variable num. The value of num should be entered into a text box. A button should activate the code, and the output must be placed in 2 separate text boxes. Okay, so from all indication, we will have 3 text boxes. One text box is to accept the input from the user. Another text box will be to display the outputs to the user. Okay, but the first thing is to convert this flowchart into the correct Visual Basic Code. So let's run through the flowchart so we understand the logic. So the program starts here, and then 3 variables, sum odd, sum even, and count are declared, and they are assigned to initial values of 0. Okay, then after that, we have input num. So the user needs to enter a variable, a value stored into this variable called num. Okay, so in this case, we can use a text box to accept that value from the user. Okay, and then after that, it falls into these structures here. Now, if count is equal to num, by me saying if count equal to num, you can decide to use the if and the do while loop structures, or the for while or for next structures, or for loop structures. But here, it's up to you now to decide. But the first thing is to understand the logic of the flowchart. So input num, After that, count equal to num. When the value of num is equal to the value of count, as it was written here, that is when the loop stops. The loop stops when the value of count is equal to the value of num. Okay, so here it is not assigning the value of num, so it is not like trying to change it. It's trying to find out if count is equal to num. Okay, then the program stops and it displays sum odd, the value in the whatever value is in that variable called sum odd, and whatever value is in the variable called sum even. That's if count is equal to num. However, if count is not equal to num, that's if the condition is false, then if count is less than num, if count is less than num, if the value of count is less than num, then come down here, and then it comes to this structure again, and then it determines that if count is an odd value, so it is possible for the value of count to be less than num, and the value of the count could be an odd value or odd number like 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, and etc. So if the value of count is odd, then do this. And after doing this, increase the value of count by 1. If the value of count is an even number, then do this and then increase the value of count by 1. So regardless of what happens, either the value of count is odd or even, we must still increase the value of count by 1. That's why we have count equal to count plus 1. Okay, so that is the logic of the flowchart. Now, converting this to program to Visual Basic Codes. Okay, on our interface here, we have a text box. We have another text box. And we have another text box. So one of these text, the first text box is for the user to enter their values, and then the second text box is for the user is to display the values of some even and some odd. So let's look for labels to say some even and some odd. Okay, let's put this here and put this here and put this here. Okay, so label 1, label 2, and label 3. Okay, we can come back to rename this. We shouldn't worry much about that for now. What we are concerned about is converting that to some even. This would be the value of some odd, and the output will be displayed here. Okay, let's just go over to add a button to this. Let's put a button here. Okay, so now to program this button, the value a button should activate the code, and the output must be displayed in 2 separate text boxes. In 2 separate text boxes. So the code for this, remember to first declare your variables, then sum odd as integer, sum odd, and then sum even also is integer, or you can decide to write that as sum odd comma sum even. Then count as integer equal to 0. Now we have declared, what we have done is we have done this part, declare these variables, okay? And well, in this case also, these ones have initial values of 0, so you can put that as well. Then input now, the next one. We have a structure. We want to use a do while structure here. Do while count is less than text box 1. Text. Remember, the loop only ends when count is equal to none. So for the loop to continue to run, that's when we say do while. So do the loop or keep looping while count is less than none. Count less than none. Remember, the value of count here is okay. The value of the text box 1, the text, is what is going to take our num. Okay, so while count is less than that value, whatever the user enters into the value, keep doing that loop or keep looping. Okay, so do while count less than text box 1 dot text. If count mod 2 equal to 0. Remember, we've done the modulo operation before, or the modulo operator. Remember, it returns the remainder of a particular division. Okay, it returns the remainder of a particular division. So if count mod 2 is equal to 0, that means count is an even number. Anything modulo 2 equal to 0, it means that thing is an even number. Because if you divide an even number by 2, the remainder will always be 0. And remember that the modulo only takes the remainder of the division. Okay, so if count mod 2 equal to 0, sum even equal to sum even plus count. Whatever I've just written now, remember I'm getting it from this flowchart. If count is even, for our count to be even, it means our count modulo 2 is equal to 0. So if count modulo 2 is equal to 0, then do this process, sum even equal to sum even plus count. Okay, and then else. That means if that condition is false, that's if count mod 2 is not equal to 0, that's what the else is going to cover. Then do sum odd equal to sum, wait a minute, sum odd equal to sum odd plus count. And that's the end of the if statement. And let me go back to the flow chart. So if count is equal to even, do this. If not, do this. So that's what we've just coded. And regardless of the two, still do this. Count equal to count plus 1. That is why this comes after the if statement here. As you can see, count equal to count plus 1 comes after that structure. Because as you can see from the flowchart, that's why it is important to have a correct flowchart that works. Because if it is logically, if it is arranged correctly, then when you're typing your code also, it follows the same logical flow. All right. So the count equal to count plus 1 comes after these conditions have been tested, just like you have here. Okay. So after the if condition, then you have count equal to count plus 1. And then the loop can now be closed here. And after the loop is closed, then the output the output would be some odd and some even. So this will keep looping until we have an output, and that output will be stored into text box 2 and into box 3. Text box 2.text is equal to some even, and then text box 3.text is also equal to some odd. So we have converted this flowchart into the Visual Basic Code. We've converted this flowchart into the Visual Basic Code. Any question? Any question? Okay. As you can see that I enter the value of 5. When I run this program, I enter the value of 5 into the label 1. In this case, the label 1 will be the num. Okay, but I didn't label it as num, but I enter the number into the first text box. That number is stored into that variable text. Okay, but in this case, instead of using num, we use text box 1.text, but you can decide to assign the value of the text box 1 to the num variable. Okay, now it is testing. This 5, is it equal to count? No. Is count less than num? Yes, because remember the value of our count is 0. The value of count is 0. So is 0 less than the value I entered? Is 0 less than 5? Yes. So because that is true, that is why it followed this branch here, and then it displayed, and then it found out, excuse me, if count is odd, sum odd equal to sum odd plus count. Count is even, sum even equal to sum even plus count. And then whatever the case is, it increases the value of the count by 1. Okay, so it seems we've run out of time. Okay, it seems we've run out of time, so I will try to run through this last exercise just so that we have a clue of how it works. So the last exercise, exercise 4, is multiplication tables. I'm going to name this multiples, and I'll click OK. So in this exercise, we're expected to create a multiplication table. Okay, so in this multiplication table, you have an interface that looks like this. When the user enters, so you want to find out the multiples of 2. You want to find out the multiples of 2, how many times? 10 times. So you want to know 2 times 1, 2 times 2, 2 times 3, 2 times 4, 2 times 5, up until 2 times 10. And you want it to be displayed as it is shown here in this screenshot. So how can you do this? Okay, obviously the first thing is for you to create your interface. And in this interface, we have a group box, which I'm just going to drag here and expand and move this right here. And then in this group box, you have a label, you have another label, and you have a text box, and you have another text box. Okay, and then you have a button. We have a button right below here. And here you have also a text box, but now a multi-line text box. Okay, so as we did earlier, you change the multi-line property of that text box to true, and then you can expand it so that it can accommodate more lines at once. And then we want to make sure that this text box cannot be edited by the user. So read only, we make it true. Okay. And then we want it to be able to scroll. So you come to the scroll property and you set it to vertical, just in case the user wants the multiplication to be a long value. So this label here, I can change this to multiplier, and this changes to number of times. This button changes to get multiplication table. Get multiplication table. Okay. Okay, this group box, let's just change the name to inputs. The text property will be changed to input. Okay, so remember what we want to try to achieve is a student or whoever, if they enter, they want to find the multiples of a particular value, how many times. So they enter the number here and how many times they want to find the multiples, and it is shown here in this box. So let's see how this can be coded. I'll just go to the button and double click to go to the programming area straight away. And then in the programming area, you should see here now that we have, okay, let's just remove this. Okay. So in the programming area, when the user clicks, so we have 3 text boxes. We have text box 1, we have text box 2, and we have text box 3. Okay, so remember that. And then we type text box 3, that's clear. Declare J as integer. And then we use a for loop structure in this case to say for J equal to 0, okay, for J equal to 0, wait a minute, for J equal to 0 to whatever the user enters into text box 2, do the following: text box 3 dot text equal to text box 3 dot text one text join to this X symbol, or should I say in this case, the X letter or character, then join to J, join to another string, which is equal to, then join that J. And then for the next one to come to the next line, we have text equal to join to this next line. Okay, so here we've programmed the button, right? We've programmed the button, and that's what we have here. So when we click on the button, the first thing the button will do is to clear the content of text box 3. So whatever was here will be cleared. Okay, and then we declare J as integer because we want to use it as our counter. And then for J equal to 0 to text box 2.text. So we want to start multiplying from 0. So let me give you a very simple example here. So you want to say 2 times 0 is equal to 0 times 4 is equal to what? 2 is equal to 4. And you want to keep doing this until you get to 12 is equal to 24. So this is what we want to achieve. Okay? This is what we want to achieve. So these two, let me take you to the interface here. So this 2 here will be the multiplier. Okay? This 2 will be the multiplier. That's what the user wants to use as the multiplier to find the multiples of those things. This x, obviously we know it should be multiplying, but we just want to display it. So here, this x is just going to be this x that you have here. I think one thing I should do is just to, I can try to remove this and then I'll explain later so that you don't get confused. Let me just remove this. Yeah, let me remove this. And then I'll try to explain that later. So I'm just going to do it one by one. Okay, so I've removed something that may look confusing. So what we firstly want to achieve is textbox3.text is equal to textbox3.text plus textbox1.text times j. So here you're joining textbox3.text, whatever the content is, to textbox1.text times j. So what is j here? Whatever the initial content of this, textbox1.text, remember here, is our multiplier. So 2 is in this case our multiplier, 2 times j. Now our j is going to depend. Remember, j is starting from 0 to whatever the user has specified in textbox2. So this is textbox2, number of times. If the user specifies 2 as a multiplier, the user specifies 2, and then the user wants to know is 12, right? Then our textbox1 is containing 2, and our textbox2 is containing 12. So let me go back to the codes. So in this code, our textbox3, which is this big textbox, multi-line text box, is going to be textbox1.text, which is 2 times j. And because j now will now start from 0 to 12. Remember, 0 to textbox2.text, and textbox2.text here is 12. So 0 to 12. So 0 to 12 times, this will be happening for 0 to 12 times. That's why for the first time, you have 2. That's the counter. If I run this program here, and I enter the multiplier as 2, and the number of lines let's fix the error here. Conversion from string to type double is not valid. Okay, let's attend to the error there and then come back to our program. Okay, so yeah, I'll be right back. Just fixing this program to get the correct input. Okay, so so once again, I'm going to run this program. So what has happened is that the value of j obviously has been declared as an integer. And now for j equal to 0 to text box 2.text, now the value of our text box 1.text would be an integer value that is determined by what the user enters into the multiplier text box. So if you run this program now, after writing these codes just as they are, then you have the following. So let's run this. And sometimes you can just be, if you want to be extra sure, just use functions to convert your text boxes to integers or to doubles. In this case, integers, because we're finding multiples, okay? So that you can avoid the error of your text box automatically accepting its values as strings, okay? So as I said, you can decide to do it that way if you are very much familiar with that. Use the convert functions, convert dot to double or convert dot to integer in this case. And then in the bracket, you have your text box, so that whatever value you enter into the text box is treated as an integer and not as a string, if you're not sure of other functions to use to achieve that. So if we run this, you realize that if our multiplier is 2 and the number of times is 12, here in the multiplication table, 2 times 0 is 0, 2 times 1 is 2, 2 times 2 is 4, 2 times 3 is 6, up until 2 times 12 is 24. But here, the 2x12 you are seeing here is just, this x here is the only string that you have here. As you can see here, the x and the equal to, they are the only strings. As you can see up here, the x here and the equal to here is what shows up in this output. Okay, so the only thing that will be changing in this program would be the value of the text box 1.text and the value of j. Those are the only things that will be changing in the program. But the other things like the equal to is just a string and the x is just a string. Okay, so this is a very short program, but very useful as well. Okay, so that brings us to the end of today's practical session. Please drop your student numbers and the campus you belong to in the chat section, and have a nice day.